You're not gonna believe what this woman did. So I live on a few acres of land. Peaceful, quiet, surrounded by pasture. Nothing fancy, just my own little slice of freedom. But that calm got wrecked when my neighbor, who's part of the HOA board and thinks she runs the world, started cutting through my pasture with her SUV like it was her private shortcut. At first, I figured it was a one-time thing. Maybe she got lost. Maybe there was an emergency. But nope. Day after day, she kept driving through like she owned the place, tearing up the grass, messing with my livestock, and ignoring every time I asked her to stop. I tried being polite. I left notes. I even put up a simple wire fence. She just drove right through it. Told me HOA had easement rights, which, spoiler alert, they don't. And every time I called her out, she'd roll her eyes and say I was being dramatic. Meanwhile, I'm watching my pasture get destroyed, my animals stressed, and my property rights stomped on. So I came up with a little plan. Nothing dangerous, nothing illegal, just something to make sure she finally got the message loud and clear. Let's just say, the next time she took her little joyride through my field, she didn't make it very far. You won't believe what happened when those tires hit the ground. Stick around, because it only gets crazier from here. Now, before you think I went full crazy with some over-the-top revenge plan, let me explain. This wasn't just some petty neighbor drama. This had been going on for months. I talked to her calmly more times than I can count, showed her property lines, even spoke with the HOA. Turns out, they had no clue what she was talking about. There was no easement, no right-of-way, no reason at all for her to be on my land. But she didn't care. She had that rules don't apply to me kind of energy. You know the type, HOA Karen in full form. She'd speed through the pasture like she was on a racetrack, leaving deep ruts in the dirt, knocking over fence posts and spooking my horses. One of my cows even got loose once because she left the gate wide open. That was my final straw. I started documenting everything, videos, photos, even GPS tracks from her tire marks. I wanted to do it right, but no matter how much evidence I had, it didn't seem to matter. She'd always come up with some excuse or flat out deny it. The local sheriff's office said it was a civil matter, and the HOA just shrugged it off. So, I knew I had to handle this in a way that made her realize she couldn't treat other people's property like it was hers to trample. I wasn't looking for a fight, but I was done being pushed around. That's when I got the idea. The idea didn't come to me out of anger. It came out of pure frustration. I just wanted her to stop. So I started thinking, what's something that sends a message but isn't going to get me into trouble? That's when I remembered these old roofing tacks I had in the barn. Tiny things, but strong enough to ruin anyone's morning if they ran them over. I didn't put them near the road or where someone could get hurt, only on the narrow strip where she had been cutting across day after day. The rest of my pasture was untouched. Just that one path, the unofficial Karen Highway, as I'd started calling it. And here's the crazy part. Right around this time, a few of my other neighbors started sharing their own stories. Turns out I wasn't the only one dealing with her antics. One guy said she filed a complaint about his garden shed not matching HOA colors, even though it wasn't in the HOA zone. Another woman said Karen yelled at her kids for riding bikes too loud near her driveway. The more I heard, the more I realized this wasn't just personal, it was a pattern. She liked control. And when she didn't get her way, she'd push harder. Still, none of us wanted drama. We just wanted peace. But peace doesn't come easy when someone like her is involved. So when I saw her SUV creeping back onto my pasture that morning, tires crunching the dry grass, I knew something was about to go down. I watched her from the kitchen window that morning, sipping my coffee, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. She was driving slower than usual, like she was taking her sweet time to mess with me again. It was almost as if she knew I was watching. She didn't even look at the no trespassing sign I'd put up at the edge of the pasture. Karen was on a mission, and this time it wasn't just her usual quick trip across my land. No, this time, she was going deeper into the pasture, right where I had placed those roofing tacks. My heart started to race as she crept forward, the sound of the tires on the grass unnerving. I could see her glancing around, probably feeling like she was untouchable in her little SUV. I'd seen this act before, the I do whatever I want attitude. But this time, I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I stepped outside, trying to stay calm, even though my hands were shaking. The wind was still, and everything felt too quiet. It was like the calm before the storm. I knew she didn't realize what was waiting for her. And as I stood there, watching her move closer to that patch of land, I could almost feel the tension in the air, the sense that something was about to break. She didn't stop. She never did. As her tires hit the first set of spikes, there was a sudden pop, a sharp, aggressive sound that seemed to echo across the entire pasture. Then another, and another, the unmistakable sound of tires deflating, one by one. I took a breath, but it caught in my chest. I knew what would happen next. I wasn't sure how she'd react, but I was almost certain it wouldn't be pretty. The sound of her tires popping was just the beginning. I could feel the tension building, but I never expected what happened next. As she slammed on the brakes, her car jerked to a stop right in the middle of the pasture. I was already halfway down the driveway, trying to get closer to see how she'd react, but I could hear her screaming from a distance. At first, I thought she'd just curse me out and call it a day. She was used to throwing her weight around like that. But this time, something felt different. She didn't just stop her car. She jumped out, and I saw her grab her phone. I figured she was calling for a tow truck, but no, that wasn't it. She was calling someone else. I heard her shouting, her voice almost unrecognizable from the rage. I couldn't make out every word, but I caught something about taking care of it and getting justice. My stomach dropped. Who the hell was she calling? Seconds later, a truck pulled up at the edge of my property. I hadn't seen that truck before. It was big, bigger than any of the usual HOA members' cars, and the man stepping out of it, he looked like trouble. His muscles were visible under his tight shirt, and he was carrying something in his hand, some kind of tool or rod. I didn't know whether to stay hidden or confront them, but one thing was clear: this wasn't over, and it was about to get a whole lot worse. I stood frozen, wondering if I had just triggered something I couldn't control. What was she doing? And who was this guy? Was this just a crazy neighbor moment, or was I about to find myself in something way more dangerous than I had ever imagined? The man walked toward the pasture with a calm, almost calculated stride. I stayed where I was, heart pounding, wondering if this was the point where things would escalate into something I couldn't control. I could barely see Karen through the window now, but I knew she was pacing beside her car, still on the phone with someone. The tension was thick, like I could almost taste it in the air. As the man got closer, I noticed something. His hands weren't empty after all. He was holding a crowbar. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Was he here to intimidate me, or worse, damage my property? I needed to make sure I didn't back down now. No way I was letting someone push me around again. I stepped out of the shadows, facing them both. "Hey," I shouted, keeping my voice steady, though my chest felt like it was going to explode. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" The guy didn't flinch. Instead, he glanced at Karen, who was still on the phone. He finally spoke, his voice low and threatening. "We're here to fix your little problem. You've been making things difficult for Karen." I didn't know whether to laugh or keep my cool. This was the HOA enforcer I've been hearing about. I was about to tell him exactly what I thought of his enforcement, but before I could speak, something unexpected happened. Karen ended her call and walked over, eyes wide as she saw the guy holding the crowbar. "You're crazy," she muttered, suddenly stepping back. "What are you doing here?" I blinked, caught off guard. What the hell was going on? This wasn't the confrontation I had expected. And then, just like that, the man dropped the crowbar to the ground with a clatter. He turned to Karen, his expression shifting from tough guy to something almost apologetic. "Look, I didn't sign up for this," he said, his voice quieter now. You told me this was just a warning, but you're going too far. Karen froze, staring at him in confusion. What are you talking about? I'm not doing this. I'm out. And with that, the guy turned and walked back to his truck, leaving Karen standing there, looking completely stunned. I felt a strange sense of victory, but the real twist was yet to come. Karen, now standing there in silence, suddenly looked at me with something I hadn't expected: fear. Her eyes narrowed, and she opened her mouth to speak, but instead of a final round of insults, she just shook her head and mumbled something about not having time for this. Then she climbed into her SUV, started it up, and drove off, leaving the crowbar in the dirt. As I stood there, the sound of her tires fading in the distance, it finally hit me. Not only had I won, but she had lost control. The queen of the HOA had just been shown her place. And the real kicker: that crowbar wasn't the only thing she'd left behind. Just as I was about to head back to the house, I noticed a small envelope wedged under the tire of her car. I bent down and picked it up. It was a letter from the HOA, and what it said, well, let's just say it wasn't the kind of letter you want to get if you were trying to keep your little kingdom intact. I opened it slowly, a smirk creeping across my face as I read the words. This battle, it was over. But the war, that was just getting started. As I unfolded the letter, a sense of satisfaction washed over me. It wasn't just a simple notice. It was a formal letter from the HOA, one that they'd sent to Karen after receiving multiple complaints from neighbors, myself included. The letter outlined that her behavior, harassing neighbors, disregarding property boundaries, and using the HOA's name to bully others, was officially under review. They even mentioned that she would no longer be allowed to influence decisions without facing consequences. I couldn't help but smile. Karen had overplayed her hand, and now the very people she'd manipulated were starting to see through her act. The neighborhood felt different now, less tense, less fearful of her influence. She'd lost her power, and I had the proof in my hands. The HOA's decision would force her to back off, and the best part? She couldn't use her usual tricks to get out of it. In the days that followed, I could hear neighbors talking more freely, finally relieved that her reign of Karen-style chaos had been exposed. Even the local sheriff dropped by to check in on me after hearing about the incident, just to make sure things stayed peaceful. And for once they did. As for me, I got back to life as usual. The pasture stayed intact. The animals were happy. I'd learned a lot about standing up for what's right, and how sometimes you have to take matters into your own hands to protect your peace. The HOA drama was over, but I couldn't help but wonder, was Karen's story really finished? Only time would tell.